if you want the coffee, there will always be the coffee, we assume. But can you pay the price for it?
Exactly. Bingo.
Okay.
That's exactly it. And that's what creates sometimes these panic situations where suddenly the market's spiraling higher and higher. And you're saying, what is going on? And it's because a short is starting to hit the panic button that they're not going to be able to meet delivery. And they have to then, close out their position.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop. It's time to become a coffee consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 2 of what is a great series with Judy Ganes, everybody's favorite on this podcast, Judy. This is a series about the market structure and certified stocks in coffee. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the causes of fluctuation in certified stocks. Where do we start?
Well, we already talked about a little bit in terms of understanding the market structure. So you have contango, where the market is on a curve, becomes more expensive from one delivery month to the next. And that's a normal carrying structure. And then you have this inversion, which is what we have now, and it's called backwardation. And the normal carry is contango, to reinforce the terminology. Now, when you have backwardation, you have to say, okay, how steep is that backwardation?
Okay.
So when the steeper the backwardation, the more willing producers are to sell that coffee as fast as possible.
Out of fear.
So that helps to bring more coffee to the board. When the market is in moderate backwardation, which is what we have now, you have to say, I'm going to throw another terminology out, another phrasing out there. What is tender roll parity? So at what price does it make sense to sell the coffee to the New York market or sell it in the open market? And that price structure, will help to determine that. So the market, when it's at an extreme, steep backwardation, then more than likely you're going to see a lot more coffee thrown at the board. So some of the older coffee that's discounted, that's been sitting in warehouses, that wasn't certified previously, because that loophole was closed last year, will be brought to the board because you can get a better price for it. The New York market becomes the best buyer for that coffee. And that will cause certified stocks to build. So we hit a low in certified stocks last year of 233,000 bags. And now they're over 800,000. And that's because we've been in this inverted market structure for over 200 days and counting. In addition, there were times where if you map it out and you plotted the market structure, the inversion, how steep the premium is relative to the number of bags that are pending grading for certification, you can see that the steeper the backwardation, the more coffee that shows up.
And is that because people are worried that the price is going to be worse value in the future than it is right now?
Right. You're getting a much better price today than you would if you held on to that coffee, paid for storage, and delivered it 2 months from now.
Right.
So that's what gives you that play with, do certified stocks build or not, and how much coffee shows up at the exchange for rating. to become deliverable supply. Now, when certified stocks are very low, then it creates a different type of panic. And we start talking about this a little bit in the last episode, because I said you can have a general shortfall in the market where suddenly there's a fear of a future supply shortage, probably because of a weather event. But you can have also a situation where certified stocks are very tight, but there's plenty of supply elsewhere in warehouse. And we had that situation last year. And it's been something that has been occurring on a more frequent basis because of another reason that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's go back in time and have flashback to the year 2000.
Okay.
Because this is really where the problems started as far as understanding the certified stock movement. And we could even go back to 1997, because that was the first time that certified stocks were almost nil. And the New York market exploded to the upside. The market went from $1.25 to $3.18 a pound in 4 months flat.
Because the
there was
expectation?
almost no certified stock.
But was there coffee in the cash market?
There was some, but Brazil had a frost in 1994. It was a double frost in July 1994. That tightened up supply. But then you also had the start of roasters using just-in-time inventory practices and saying, well, we don't need to carry as much coffee. We're going to let our computer systems guide us more.
That fucking chestnut.
We don't need to carry 12 to 16 weeks of coffee. We could do with 6 to 8 weeks. And then all of a sudden, there's a supply blip, and the market structure made it that someone would want to stand in and take delivery. But if there's no coffee, then the short holder is one responsible. So the short has to make the coffee available. The long, the buyer, is one that wants to take delivery. If the longs stand in and they're more demanding of, we want that coffee, you need to deliver it to us against September or against March or May, whatever contract, then the short has to go out into the physical market and find that coffee and get it graded in time to the delivery.
What happens if they can't find the coffee? What's the legal implication there? Can they sell contracts without knowing if the coffee is going to be available?
Well, sure. That's done all the time, because remember, only 2% of the contracts actually go into delivery. It doesn't necessarily, just because you're short, it could be that you're anticipating getting delivery of the coffee. And then suddenly there's a supply problem and the market moves against you. So will there be a situation where a short can't get the coffee?
Yeah.
No. It just is a matter of a price of whether they can stomach it or not.
Okay.
Right?
So if you want the coffee, there will always be the coffee, we assume. But can you pay the price for it?
Exactly. Bingo.
Okay.
That's exactly it. And that's what creates sometimes these panic situations where suddenly the market's spiraling higher and higher, and you're saying, what is going on? And it's because a short is starting to hit the panic button that they're not going to be able to meet delivery, and they have to then, close out their position.
Okay.
And it's at what price?
If you're at home listening or at the gym listening, or wherever you're listening, and you didn't understand what Judy just said, please rewind and listen again. That's how I listen to podcasts sometimes. If I don't quite understand what people are talking about, I sometimes have to rewind a few times and make the pieces happen over a couple of listens. So please don't feel like there's something wrong with you if you don't get this. This stuff breaks my brain, and I've got a fucking science degree, just so that you know. So this is a whole other language for those of us who came into this industry as baristas and business owners and things like that. So anyway, please go on, Judy.
So as far as the market, and I start to give that little bit of history lesson. So let's back up to that.
Yeah.
When 1997 occurred and prices hit that went over $3 per pound, that gave the green light of let's produce more. And Robusta prices at that time were depressed. So Arabica prices rallied sharply. Robusta prices were very low because Vietnam was first coming on stream producing, greater and greater crops. That time it was like 15 million bags compared to, their potential now over 30 if they have good weather. And so the Robusta prices were very low. Arabica prices were high. And roasters figured out, you know what, we're going to use more more Robusta. So the arbitrage, the spread between Arabica and Robusta prices widened, and roasters made that shift. That helped to ease the supply for Arabicas and put the lights out for the bull market.
Right.
And certified stocks started coming up because the market was in steep backwardation.
And if I understand it correctly, from the conversations I'm having, something similar is happening now.
It is, or it has been.
Yeah.
Okay, now, because there was the signal for increasing production on the back of that supply rally, what do you think happened 3 years later? The market was tumbling and prices fell to historic lows. So what goes up comes down. And that's when there was, I'm sure you heard about the price crisis of 2000.
Right.
So the longer the market holds at high levels that encourage increased productivity and softens demand and creates these demand shifts, then ultimately the lower the market's going to fall. But it hasn't happened yet because we keep having one weather problem after the next and keeping the supply more limited. So it's kicking the can down the road.
So there are external factors that didn't exist in 2000 that are now are an important variable to impact the forces that are determining supply rather than just demand. So this is not a demand thing. This is a supply thing that's an issue here.
Correct. That has been pretty much since 2000, with the exception of the Brazilian 23-24 crop. So last year's crop, not the one that is wrapping up now.
Okay.
Now, let's dial back to 2000 and what happened. So prices sank to 42 cents a pound compared to 240. I mean, we're talking about not even Brazil, the most efficient producer, could not make money at prices. And at that time, there was some decision making about, are we going to sell our farms and get out of coffee? Or how do we divorce ourselves from the C market and try and capture more value? And that was how the specialty coffee movement started to gain more and more momentum. And it was also when you had Rainforest Alliance and UTS and Fair Trade and these certification programs start to come on stream, where premiums were being paid for certification of coffee. So now that is very different because I said certification of coffee, but it's really certification of the farms.
Okay.
Which is very different. So when we talk about certification, is not the same as certified stock and certified coffee stock. So keep that distinction in mind. Those programs were designed to, the farmer follows the program, does certain things, and tries to make the farm more sustainable and create more value and worth for their coffee. And Fair Trade or UTS or Rainforest Alliance is going to demand that producers pay a higher price for that coffee.
They get paid a higher price for that coffee.
That they're going to
receive.
pay a guaranteed minimum price for coffee to the producers. So they're going to pay a premium, over the market rate. That encourage producers to take the initiative to have their farms certified.
Right.
With the certification programs. That, and there was, instead of paying attention to, we're going to just expand production, we're going to focus on quality. So we can be paid more for our coffee rather than just continuing to pump out more coffee and the market's going to stay depressed.
Right.
Now, how does the market award producers for quality? And that's where differentials come into place.
Right. Right.
So when you have higher quality than the C market price, then you have a positive differential. And so a lot of Central American coffee that was deliverable to the New York market started to trade at positive differentials. If you're getting the C plus a positive differential, then you're above tenderable parity. Why would anyone, if you could get 10 cents more in the cash market, why would you deliver coffee to the board? You wouldn't.
You wouldn't at all. I have a question, if that's okay. When you are certified, when your coffee is being certified to the C, what are they certifying? Is it that there's a base quality that's accepted? What's the certification? What are they certifying when they do that?
Okay, so there's one, it's a washed Arabica contract.
Okay.
And by the way, Brazilians weren't always deliverable. I mean, there was forget that. That's a whole nother chapter about the feud to get Brazilians deliverable. So certain countries have a built-in premium or a discount, a country premium or a discount. It's recognized that for the most part, they're at a higher premium.
Okay.
So that's something else to keep in mind. But what it is for most part, it's looking at defects. What is the allowable defects in the lot of coffee? So what is the size and the color? And is the coffee clean in terms of, are there little pieces of stone, or are the beans broken, or are they cracked? Is the lot uniform? So it's really physical characteristics of the coffee.
Okay.
The exchange introduced some rule changes a number of years ago, around the time when Brazil started to be delivered, that introduced a taste component to the coffee.
Oh, wow.
And that was that the coffee can't have any hint of aging in the cup.
Okay.
And it can't have any taste of natural coffee because it's a washed Arabica coffee. And most of Brazilian coffee is dried natural. So for listeners that don't understand that difference between washed and natural, it's a matter of what happens when you take the cherry off the tree. When it's washed, which is the way it's done in Colombia and most of Central America, is that the beans inside the cherry are removed from the cherry and depulped and then dried on patio that way. And that is the green coffee. In Brazil and in Yemen and some other countries,
Ethiopia,
you take the cherry and you dry it with the bean inside. And so there's a little bit of fermentation because of that. So you get like a sweetness in the cup. Other people might say other things about it, but you get the different flavor note because of how you're drying the coffee, whether it's in the cherry or you're drying it once it's depulped.
Yep.
The deliverable coffee is washed. And for Brazil, they've developed a semi-washed method that passes where you don't really have that hint of natural flavors in the cup.
The last time you were on the podcast, you were talking about certified stocks. getting, is it decertified? So people pull them out of certified stocks and then they would recertify them.
But you can't do that anymore.
Okay, so
the exchange put a new rule in where you can't take the coffee from certified stock and then recertify it. The reason that was going on was because it was basically stopping the meter.
Right.
So coffee that sits in certified stock gets an age-related penalty. So the longer it sits in stock, the greater the penalty that accrues. What was happening previously was that you'd have all this coffee that was sitting there and it would accrue a steep discount, the penalties. It would be taken from the board and then pass grading because it wasn't that aged. And it would be like setting the odometer back on a car to 0. It's still older coffee.
Yeah.
But someone made that discount, and put that money in their pocket and then was able to turn back and sell it back to the board at a higher price.
So when you buy off the C market, you're just buying, if you decide to take ownership of that coffee, that 2% that we're talking about,
right?
Do they get to determine whether they want a coffee that has a positive differential on it or not, or they just take whatever they get given?
Well, remember that if you're getting it from the board, whatever the settlement price is on the market, that's the price you're paying.
And the coffee, though, the physical coffee that you're going to get, do you have a say in what that coffee is and what origin it's coming from?
It's whatever is deliverable. Now, there's something called AA against actuals or EFPs, exchange for physicals. It's pretty much the same thing where someone in the trade has an opposite position of you. And so they're taking, it's an off the books transaction. So they might be long futures, someone else is short futures. One has the long physical, the other has the short physical of the specific. And it becomes an offset.
Okay. We lost you for a second there. So,
okay.
Can you just repeat what you just said?
Sure. So for the most part, if you're taking delivery from the market, the coffee that's delivered, you don't really have a say. You can, if you want to reject the notice, you can and say, I'm not going to take that coffee. However, for the most part, what you get delivered, that's what it is.
Okay.
And there's some plus or minuses based on the quality differences in that coffee. So
go on. Where?
Now, if someone knows someone who has the opposite position and they want to swap the physicals and they have the corresponding hedge. So one is short hedge, one is long hedged in the market, and one has the physical, one doesn't, then they could cross those positions. And that's called AA, against the actuals. Some people call it an EFP, exchange for physicals. And what happens is someone else gets your position and it closes out the futures. And so it shows a slight decline based on that volume in the open interest.
As you can see, folks, none of this makes any fucking sense to those of us who don't work in this.
Yeah, that's
She's
a little
so smart. I love that my friends are smarter than me. I love it.
That's going into nitty gritty, and most people do not need to know that. So we could even scratch that whole conversation.
But no problem.
You asked the question, and so I am.
I did no, and this is the thing: we have such a diverse audience that some people are going to absolutely understand everything that you just said. I just don't, and that's fine. That's completely fine. What we are going to talk about in the next episode, though, is how does this relate to the prices and overall global supply outlook? Because right now, we're all talking about a coffee crisis, and that coffee crisis is coming from a whole bunch of different directions. Supply is one of them. So join us in the next episode, folks. I can't wait. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.